Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Video Impact, where you will be learning 8 things to pay attention to when shooting videos, including sound and lighting and how to set it all up. Today we have Justin Banks back as our special guest. Justin is a professional actor and cinematographer and is the creative director of New Heights Media. With his 10 plus years of experience behind the camera, I'm really excited to hear what he has to share with us today. How are you going, Justin?
I'm very well. It sounds like I have an identical twin somewhere that does half of that stuff for me.
So we're going to go into the 8 things to pay attention to when shooting videos. So why don't you just give us a brief overview of these 8 things?
Okay, so very, very quickly, I think one of the first things you look at is where you're shooting, because that will determine a lot of things, what gear you have, sort of things. So location is probably your most the prominent thing you got to worry about. Lighting is a big one, obviously. You need to be able to see the contrast in shots. Is your subject lit more than the background sort of thing? Are they going to stand out? So lighting's a huge one as well. Background. Your background is really one of the key factors that creates a beautiful shot. So your background is actually really important. And then composition as well. So where is everything framed? How much real estate of the screen has been used for what? Then you've got things like setup. So if you are inside or outside, your setup is going to change a lot. Whether you have lights or reflectors or so forth. Your subject, your person, are they, generally in a shot you would like to actually have your person, your subject lit just a little bit more than the background so they stand out sort of thing. So, how is your subject framed? What do they look like? Also, if you have a pink shirt on and there's something pink right behind you in the background, you don't stand out sort of thing. So these are really important things to think about as well. Sound is another one. You can't get away with sound. You need to have good sound. And when you say you get a DSLR camera, you get an iPhone, you record straight the sound like that, it's not good enough. So you need to have some sort of lapel mic or shotgun mic or something. And then you've got to think about your message. Like, what are you actually talking about? And how does that actually define what you're going to have in your shot? So as an example, last night I was shooting an online course for a psychiatrist, and I put her on a couch. So I had a couch right next to her, so it looked like that feel of you talking to a shrink. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things to consider before shooting.
Yeah. So there is a lot of things. There are a lot of things. Sorry, but don't get scared because we're going to go into each of these points in more detail. So let's go across to location, which was our first thing to think about. So Justin, let's expand a bit on location.
Okay, so if let's say you got to choose whether you're going to shoot inside or outside, you've actually got a lot of pros and cons with both. Okay, let's take inside for an example. So if you do indoor shooting, you will have a lot more control over lighting. If you're clever and you do what I do, which is close every blind and turn every light off before you start, the sun will have no effect on how much the lighting of the shot changes. So if you've got a subject inside and there's a window right next to them and you start at midday, then by the end of the day, the light will have actually changed because the sun's moved in the sky. So if you close all the blinds, turn the lights off, you can start from scratch. That's what I always do. I always try and make a room as dark as I can before I start to have control over light. Do
you need to do that when you're only shooting, say, 2 or 3 videos and you'll be done in an hour?
Not so much, but you do need to worry about things like cloud cover. So let's say it's a generally cloudy day, right? Actually, the other day we were shooting with a green screen. It was a sort of partially cloudy day, and so each time the cloud would go over the top of the sun, the light would even out to be beautiful. But every time the sun came back out again, the shutters that we had in the room, it would cast a shadow, which would actually ruin shots. So yes, it does matter.
Okay.
On top of that, so if you're inside, you want to be using some nice soft lighting with your subject. You want to be using some softbox lighting on the faces so it doesn't cast too many horrible shadows and so forth.
We'll go into softbox lighting later.
Yeah. We got your back, don't worry. And if you're outside as opposed to inside sort of thing, you've got to deal with a lot more, I think, on the short term. So let's say you want to shoot in the middle of the day, right? And generally most people, without thinking about it, will want to shoot in the middle of the day. And the problem with that is that the sun is actually straight up, or almost straight up at the time. right? So what that's going to do is it's going to cast these horrible sort of bag shadows under your eyes and just make your eyes really dark. People want to see your eyes in when they're watching films because your eyes are the windows to your soul, and that's how people are going to trust you. And if you're selling something, people need to trust you.
And it doesn't matter if you're indoor or outdoor.
Correct.
You always need to see your eyes.
Yeah. So when you watch a screen and someone comes, like a human comes on the screen, the first thing you look at without even thinking is their eyes. It's just an impulse that we all have. And it doesn't matter how good looking or ugly someone is, their eyes are always really interesting. All right. So it's very important for us as an audience to see the eyes. So if you've got these horrible shadows covering that up, you can't see. So how am I going to trust who I'm seeing on the screen? So we use these things called diffusers, where we put something over the top of the subject's head and cover out that light sort of thing. So if the sun does sort of come out of the clouds, it won't keep changing the shadow. Diffusion is really important. So sunlight is very harsh. It will cast very harsh shadows. But if you diffuse it with a diffuser, it will sort of mellow those shadows out a little bit. However, now that was if you're shooting at like midday. Let's say you're shooting at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun's about to go down. You've only got a couple of videos to do, sort of thing. The sun is actually, we call it magic hour in films because it's the best time to shoot. There is no better time to shoot than like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun goes out to a nice parallel position, like on the horizon, and you don't get those horrible bags under your eyes. Now you get this beautiful light coming in on the same sort of line that your eyes are. And if, let's just say the sun's over here and I turn this way, it's going to create this beautiful glow around my body, okay? The drawback for that is that it's going to make, the camera's going to look at that as being very bright, and then I'm going to be very dark. So you need to reflect some light back onto the subject. Now, if you don't have reflectors, you can actually just use like a big white piece of polystyrene and just reflect the light back on them, and they'll light up a little bit, they'll glow a little bit. So I think there's a lot of things to consider, and you will have a lot of pros and cons with whatever you choose. I think it's easier shooting inside than it is outside. Mm-hmm. Dealing with elements is always a little bit hard. And also not being able to predetermine whether it's going to be a cloudy day or a sunny day.
Prepare to shoot outside and then it starts raining.
Oh yeah, that too. But I mean, like Braveheart, like they actually shot Braveheart predominantly in Ireland instead of Scotland because the weather was just overcast every day. So the lighting was just evenly, like every day. And so even though they wanted to keep to the historical part and shoot in Scotland, they're just like, oh bugger it, we'll shoot in Ireland because it's, the clouds are out every day and we don't have to worry about diffusing anyone. It looks good.
Cool. So what about background music and noise and people moving in the background? Can you talk about how that might be something to watch out for when you're shooting outside? Yeah, so different noises come through on different frequencies, and some things are harder to deal with than others. So like if you, let's say I'm sitting in a park and someone walks right behind me. Well, that sort of footsteps on grass is going to be a real high frequency sound. It's going to be very, very hard to get rid of. And you can also just see them walking past your shot.
Well, that too. We try and avoid those things. But yeah, like things like cars on the side of the road. A car, it's easier to get rid of the car noise than it is for something sporadic like steps or birds chirping. That's a really hard one because the sound isn't it's not constant. It's like quick.
So if you are shooting outside, then should you kind of position yourself so that you won't have people in your background?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, if you're doing a video about accountancy, you don't want people playing and flying kites in the back of your shot. Kind of defeats the purpose. You don't want distractions, I think, is the more important thing.
Exactly. You want to focus on the focus to be on you.
Of course, yeah.
Cool. And the last point on this outdoor shooting tips was about power and memory storage.
Oh yeah. Well, so basically, yeah, if you're in a park and you're nowhere near a power point, which is I think we get very used to relying on PowerPoints. Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you have a bunch of SD cards. Make sure you have plenty of batteries that are pre-charged the night before. I always say overcompensate. I basically say, okay, how many batteries am I going to need this shoot? Say 3, I'll take 6.
Bring extra.
Always.
Everything.
Double.
SD cards,
double,
batteries,
everything.
Lights. Okay.
Because you never know.
Yeah. We kind of skipped over a bit about indoor shooting tips, so let's just go back to that for a couple of minutes. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk about this sound and the echo in the room? You know how some indoor places have wooden floorboards, things like that.
Okay. So one of the first things I do when I walk into a room when I'm about to shoot is I click.
And that's what all the clicking is
That's
for.
that's the clicking. I'll do that. I'll click and I'll look at my hand. I'll look at, because I'm looking at a 3D object.
Anyway, so
I
what's the
wanna see.
clicking for?
The clicking is to hear if there's any like reverb. If I can hear the resonance of the click for more than say 2 seconds, room's not good enough.
And then how do you fix it?
More couches, drapes, anything.
Blankets and booners.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So anything with material. It actually soaks up sound quite well. So sound has a tendency to bounce off things, particularly hard surfaces. So if I talk down here, the sound will bounce off the table and carry on sort of thing. But if surfaces are sort of jagged or soft, it will not bounce off so hard. It will actually sort of be dulled out by it.
Yeah.
So the more furniture you have in a room, it will actually make it easier for you to get your sound right in your shoots.
Great. Okay, we've also got on the dot points is to shoot where it's quiet and also have plenty of space around you and keep room behind you for depth of field. So why is it important to have lots of space around you and behind you as well?
Okay, all right. So one of the fundamentals of film that is not really understood by many people. If I could actually, you know what, put your hand in front of your face. Just do this and look at your palm. Look at the palm of your hand. And notice that everything around it goes really blurry and the palm of your hand gets really, really in focus. Now, if you pull that palm away, but keep looking at it, you'll notice that everything around gets less and less blurry, right?
More in focus.
More in focus. So, but this still stays more in focus than everything else, right? So basically, your eyes and your brain are working together to communicate to say, okay, right now, this doesn't matter. This is what matters. This is what I'm looking at. This is what I need to focus on. So I'm going to make everything else not important by blurring it out so that I can study every single thing that's going on here, all the little fine details. So when we're talking about camera lenses and so forth, what we're actually doing is we're using different lenses to simulate different circumstances that the eyes are put under. Okay? So when you actually have nice depth between your subject and your background, it will give you more opportunity to blur more of the background out, which makes your subject far more in focus. And basically doing that, it will dictate to your audience that they're like naturally drawn to the person, which is what you want.
So if you want a blurry background, you have to have space between you and the background and also space around you for lighting and all your gear.
Absolutely. So you need to be able to fit your lighting in the room as well.
Yes.
So most shoots that I go on to, like in people's places or whatever, that they can't take the smallest room in the place. They go, oh, I'd really like to shoot in here. It's like, right, is that?
It's too small?
Yeah. How am I getting a light in there? So yeah, absolutely. Like as much room as possible. I mean, obviously some circumstances you can't really do much with, but when you have the opportunity, that's go for the biggest space you can.
Yeah, great. All right, let's keep moving to point number 2, which is lighting, funnily enough.
Again.
But now you're going to show us like different kinds of lighting.
Okay.
Why don't we talk about the different effects of lighting? You know, how the shade and the corporate look and versus the cinematic look, that kind of stuff.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.